Shabbat Shalom. As the hostages return home, we begin to learn bits and pieces about their story. Last week, 4 female surveillance soldiers who were abducted on October 7th, Karina Ariev, Daniela Gilboa, Naima Levy, and Liri Albag, were forced to leave Gaza without their comrade, the 20-year-old violinist Agam Berger. According to the recently freed hostages, the 4 women, Agam kept Shabbat in captivity. She refused to light a fire or to cook for the terrorists on Shabbat. She also refrained from eating meat during her captivity of 482 days to maintain her kashrut practice, making it especially difficult to keep herself from starving. In November of 2023, during the initial hostage release, Agam braided the hair of the young girls who were being released so that when they would walk out of their captivity in dignity. One of the young girls freed at that time said, "It felt like Agam was giving us a piece of her strength to take with us." Upon her release, we saw that Agam shared this defiant message: "I chose the path of faith, and with the path of faith, I have returned." When I heard Agam's story this week, it reminded me of Viktor Frankl's words, which I shared last Shabbat. They bear repeating. He said in his, of course, his memoir about his time in Auschwitz. It was Auschwitz. "Everything can be taken from a man, a person, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Our Torah portion today teaches us about 2 qualities that make for spiritual persistence: anavah, or humility, and yirat Hashem, or awe. We read that Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said to Pharaoh, "God says, Pharaoh, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before God? Let my people go so that they may worship Adonai." It seems that Pharaoh's signature weakness is his lack of humility. Simcha of Bunim used to keep 2 pieces of paper in his pockets. You may have heard this story. One piece of paper said, "I am but dust and ashes." Another piece of paper said, "The world was created for me." This story illuminates this quality of anavah, or humility. In English, it sounds like the word humiliation, which makes us shrink away from this idea. We want to be proud, not humble. Perhaps you're surprised to hear me talk about humility today. Shouldn't we be talking about pride? But this is not the Jewish idea of anavah, or humility. Anavah is the quality which allows us to be the force for good that raises others up. Anavah allows us to be the leader, the person who braids the hair of the captives so that they can walk out holding their heads high. Rav Kook, the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Israel, said that humility is associated with spiritual perfection. In the spiritual practice of Musar, one traditionally begins working with the midah, or soul trait, of humility, because this is because the work of all the other soul traits depend on this one. I want to give a brief plug for the Musar class that Eric Henley, one of our fellow congregants, will be leading. Check the Bethel calendar for that. It's going to be a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about Musar and practice it. As Alan Moranis explains, humility means occupying your rightful place or having a kind of healthy amount of self-esteem. Humility is the opposite of conceit. It's somewhere in the middle of a continuum where the extremes are arrogance and on the other side, self-effacement. So it's being somewhere in the middle. It doesn't mean making ourselves small. It means right-sizing ourselves so that we take up the appropriate amount of space. So when we go back to Agam's story, we see that it's obvious that she's full of courage and strength. But how does one go about cultivating courage and strength? Maybe, and this ties it back to our Torah portion, in exactly the way that Moses did, starting with anavah and yirat Hashem, or awe. Jewish tradition places a great deal of emphasis on this quality, especially with regard to leadership, and it's the primary quality of Moses, we're taught. We are taught that Moses was the most humble of people. Reb Nachman of Bratslav taught about two different kinds of peace: peace within oneself and peace within the world. In order to bring about the second kind, we need to start with the first. Reb Nachman had a prescription for the first kind, for internal peace. He said that we must start by cultivating these two midot, or qualities, within us: yirat Hashem, awe, and anavah, or humility. Yirah is that feeling that our ancestor Jacob, Yisrael, the God wrestler, experienced after his dream vision of the ladder, with the angels extending from the earth to the sky, when he said, "Surely God was present in this place, and I did not know it." Like so many of us, Jacob had his most profound spiritual experiences at night when he was alone and afraid. It is when we feel most in the dark and most alone that we discover who we really are, and also that we are not alone. The darkness is fertile ground for spiritual development, for individuals, as well as a people. We are in a time when, now more than ever, it's incumbent upon us to lean into the sense that we are grounded in something larger than ourselves. Awe is more than a feeling, it's an orientation to the world. It is the place from where moral reasoning and spiritual connection starts. The root of the word yirah relates to the verb lirot, to see. Awe is a way of seeing the world and of being in relationship. Awe is also a way of being seen, of knowing that God is the ultimate ro'eh, the seer, the one who sees us. Anavah and awe require courage now more than ever. Our strength is found in our integrity, in saying clearly and sometimes forcefully what we know, who we are, nothing more and nothing less. This is a time to be who we are and to do it proudly. So peace is not about silence or withdrawal. It's not about a lack of fear or a lack of trouble. Peace means standing in the midst of the chaos and tuning into the kol damama, that still small voice that reverberates in and out of us. Within every conflict, the seeds of change are buried. Every time we descend into Mitzrayim, somewhere buried in that story is the story of our exodus, our redemption. But in order to hear that redemption story, we need to be like the Talmud teaches us, soft like a reed and not stiff like a cedar. This is our time to be rooted, yet flexible. This is the time to be open to awe and to allow ourselves to be exactly who we are. Humility and awe help us recognize that we are part of something, as I said earlier, that's larger than us. Our Parsha ends with a verse that the rabbis used. They used it to concretize the practice of wearing tefillin. And you'll recognize it. V'haya l'ot al yadcha v'totafot bein einecha. And so it shall be a sign upon your hand and a symbol on your forehead, that with a mighty hand Adonai freed us from Egypt. That's the ending of our Parsha. When my rabbi, Lester Bronstein, taught the B'nai Mitzvah kids about tefillin, he introduced the topic by saying that the most important moments of the day happen not when we're coming to pray in the morning and wearing tefillin and davening, but rather after you take off your tefillin. Tefillin are an oat, a sign, a reminder. They point us in the right direction. After you finish praying and take off your tefillin, how do you go about your daily life? How do you treat the earth and other people, those you love as well as those you don't? How do you walk the walk after you've talked to God? Tefillin are just one of our spiritual technologies for remembering the Jewish formula for being a mensch. We bind them as a sign upon our arms and we keep them visible before our eyes, reminding us to be mindful and to develop healthy intentions. The sign upon our arms is close to our hearts if we're right-handed and reminds us to move those intentions forward into the world through action. Tefillin are deeply countercultural, a dramatic exterior expression of our faith and a reminder that being Jewish means not always fitting in. In fact, being Jewish feels bold and risky sometimes these days. But perhaps it always was. Consider, as we close, the story of the sage of the Talmud, Elisha, who bore the nickname the Master of Wings. In those days, the rabbis of the Talmud not only wore their tefillin during morning prayers, but they would keep them on throughout the day. In Elisha's time, the Roman officials forbade Jews from wearing tefillin and threatened to kill anyone who was found wearing them. Elisha defied this law and proudly wore his tefillin in the marketplace. A Roman soldier spotted Elisha and chased him down to kill him. As he ran, Elisha removed his tefillin and hid them in his hand. The soldier apprehended Elisha and demanded, "What's in your hand?" Elisha answered, "Kanfei Yonah, only dove's wings." The soldier demanded that Elisha open his hand, and to his astonishment, a dove emerged, flew up and away. Rashi said that the dove is a metaphor for Israel and likened the mitzvot to, and commandments to wings, which protect the dove and also allow it to fly free. I thought of Elisha's dove when I saw Agam fly into her parents' arms. May we be blessed to see the return of all of our doves, and please let them herald peace. Peace inside and peace outside, peace for our brothers and sisters in Israel, peace for the Palestinians, and please God, peace for our dear country as well. Shabbat Shalom.